Good afternoon. Welcome to the first OLS Leadership Symposium, a Richard Petty Leadership Initiative. I'm Pete Mateo, Co-Director, Office of Automotive Vehicle and Research at OLS School of Business. Before we begin, I have a special request. Please turn off your cell phones. We have a very busy schedule over the next 2 days. We also have a very impressive lineup of speakers, all leaders, and we've got some very special guests. To prepare for this event, I wanted to impress you by finding a great quote to start the symposium. After much searching, I found an appropriate one from the 35th President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who stated, "Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other." How appropriate. You are here to improve your leadership skills at an event hosted by the OLS School of Business. When someone speaks of leadership, they don't have to look further than the OLS School of Business. Since his arrival from Calgary in 2005, it has undergone a major transformation in faculty, events, education, student experience, and community involvement. It's all part of the OLS experience. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alan Conway, Dean of the OLS School of Business.
Thanks, Pete. I'd like to welcome all of you here today on behalf of the OLS School of Business and the University of Windsor. But our University President, Dr. Alan Wildeman, will also be here later this afternoon. He's speaking at a luncheon event right now, so couldn't be in two places, but he is going to be happy to be here a little later. But please let me extend welcome for both of us at this time. Leadership. Important topic and a complex topic. As Pete earlier quoted John F. Kennedy, leadership and learning go together. We are, in fact, all on our own leadership journeys. We're all striving to learn to become better leaders. And while some are further along than others at any point in time, we are all committed to becoming even better. And to become better, our objective is to make a difference, to make things better. Today and tomorrow will offer a chance for all of us to learn from each other by interacting, by listening, observing, and reflecting. And so I'm happy to be here for that as well, to join you in this. Now, this symposium is one element of the OLS School's Richard Petty Leadership Initiative, commonly known as RPLI. Named for Dr. Richard Petty, former CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and funded at the time of his retirement last year by his many friends and colleagues, RPLI aims to allow and cajole OLS students to realize their leadership potentials earlier and more sharply than would otherwise have happened. The initiative is comprised of 3 parts. The first is a stream of programming which leads students to develop and execute personal leadership development plans. That was implemented this fall and will continue in its implementation over a few years because, as you know, students, especially at the undergraduate level, go through 4 years of programming. The second part is the Leader in Residence program, and we have leaders who come to spend a day or a few days lecturing and interacting with students in a variety of formats. And we also have the opportunity for leaders to come longer. And in fact, we intend to have a leader in residence for each academic year on top of the shorter term ones. And the third element is an annual leadership symposium. And the first of those we're all attending here today and tomorrow. Now, we already have our first annual Leader in Residence for the academic year 2012-13, and that is Dr. Richard Petty. Richard will be, he is here now, and I'll ask him in a moment to stand up and be recognized, but Richard will be part of the program as time goes on, and you'll get to meet him formally. But Richard, I wonder if you would just stand up briefly here. I'd like to thank Richard for his enormous support and also for being such a positive role model for aspiring young professionals. Now, it's my pleasure to now ask His Honor, the Mayor of the City of Windsor, to bring greetings. And I'll say a few words, Eddie, about you as you come up. The youngest mayor in the history of the City of Windsor, Eddie Francis was first elected mayor in November 2003. And since then, he and City Council have pursued ambitious goals and achieved significant outcomes. While it won't take too much time to list all of Mayor Francis's achievements, they do include the successful and ongoing revitalization of Windsor's downtown, the more than halving of the city's debt while holding tax increases to an average of only 1% per year over the past 5 years, the establishment of the largest capital infrastructure plan in Windsor's history, and the gaining of approval and funding for a new $1.8 billion roadway, certainly very much needed, leading to a new bridge connecting Windsor and Detroit. Eddie graduated with a Bachelor of Science from the University of Western Ontario. He went on to graduate from the University of Windsor Law School and completed his articles with international law firm Miller, Canfield, Paddock & Stone, after which he was called to the bar in 2002. Mayor Francis is married to Dr. Michelle Prince, a doctor of chiropractic medicine, who has a family wellness practice in Windsor. Together they have 2 children, daughter Sienna and son Phoenix. His Honor, Mayor Francis.
Thank you, Dean Conway, and thank you all for that warm welcome. It is certainly a pleasure for me to be here representing my council colleagues, and this is not something that is ceremonial for me. I wanted to be here and I chose to be here. In fact, currently there's a luncheon that's going on at Caesars where we have 450 delegates from across the country that are participating in part of the conference, and most of the mayors are there. So when they asked where you're going and Eddie, what were you up to? I said, well, I've got to be here, and I wanted to be here because this is very important. And growing up in the city of Windsor, my background is in chemistry and biochemistry, and I promise I'll be short, but my background is chemistry, biochemistry. So I didn't have the opportunities that are being presented. And this weekend, the list of impressive speakers, the conference that's been put together for you, the exposure, the awareness, the communication and the partnerships and the discussion that will take place is a very unique opportunity for each and every one of you. And I think you understand that, that's why you're here. And each of us, we have the skills, we have the traits, we have the drives to be leaders. It's what we choose to do with it. It's how we choose to use it. And it's what we're prepared to do to make sure that we can leave our mark, that we can contribute, that we can give back. And whether it's in politics or in business, or whether it's a not-for-profit, or just simply in your community, or university, or college, we all have the capacity to make things happen. So the reason I wanted to come here today, more than just the ceremonial welcoming you to the city of Windsor and welcoming you to this wonderful symposium, but I also wanted to extend a sincere thanks to each and every one of you. Congratulations to all of you for choosing to increase your capacity, for choosing to further develop your leadership skills, but more importantly, for choosing to find ways to make things happen and to give back. So Dean Conway, to all the organizers, to Dr. Petty, and everyone involved, a round of applause, please, because they've done something wonderful bringing you here together. And to all of our speakers, thank you for taking time from your busy schedules, and to all the alumni and everyone that's come back home, thank you for being here to share your experience and to share your stories and to provide the type of mentorship and leadership that will inspire a new generation of leadership. We thank you for taking time and being with all of us. To all of you, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck this weekend. And never forget, it's in all of us. It's what we choose to do with it, and choose how we choose to apply it. So thank you for being great leaders today and great leaders tomorrow. All the best.
Thank you, Mayor Francis. The ODET Leadership Symposium has been led by 2 ODET students. They've been responsible for overseeing this event, and I wish to introduce Kim McGuire and Michelle Fouts. Where are they? Please stand. get a chance to hear more from them a little bit later on. Now, our kickoff speaker, Judith Humphrey, the president of the Humphrey Group, was scheduled to be here, but she had a client emergency. One of the things you realize in the corporate world is clients come first, and she had a client that demanded her attention very quickly, and we're very fortunate because she did send someone to represent her who's extremely capable, and we're pleased to have him. Instead, Gregor Jeffrey from the Calgary office, he traveled all last night, got in the wee hours in the morning, and he's here with us. Gregor leads seminars, provides coaching, and builds business relationships in Alberta. Prior to joining the Humphrey Group, Gregor founded a consulting practice in Europe that helped aerospace and major defense contractors bid, identify, and win new business opportunities in the United Kingdom, France, and Spain. He holds an honors BA in history from the University of Calgary. By the way, the Humphrey Group is one of Canada's leading corporate communications and corporate development firms in Canada, with offices in Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto. It also has a relationship with the University of Windsor. In fact, about 6-7 months ago, Judith Humphrey was a speaker at the President Championship Series. It is my pleasure to introduce Gregor Jeffrey, and thanks for taking the time to travel all the way from Calgary.
Thanks very much. Stepping in for the president of my company is a daunting task, but when Judith asked me to do this, she told me a little bit about it, and I said to her that this was something that I felt very passionate about. Because speaking as a leader is something that I've had to overcome, learn in my own career. One of the things that was mentioned in the introduction is that I have a degree in history, Italian Renaissance history from the University of Calgary. So I had to overcome a severe disadvantage in my career in order to find my place. A degree in Italian Renaissance history is not really the best thing to start off in the defense and aerospace sector. Nonetheless, communication played a huge part both in my role and in my later work. I'm going to switch over here. I think that's a bit clearer. Is that better? Okay. So, good. That's better. Now, one of the things about working with leaders in terms of communication is that more and more leaders are starting to see that communication plays an absolutely critical part in their roles. And I was working with a senior leader in Calgary the other week, and as a C-level executive of a major oil and gas company, and he said to me, he said, Gregor, you know, I'm thrilled to have this sort of training in communication, but why is it that it only happens when people reach the top of their careers? Why don't people get training in this, you know, at different points? And that's why this is such a pleasure for me to be here today. Now, the topic is speaking as a leader. And I believe very strongly that the most important skill a leader can have is the ability to speak with clarity and conviction. So what I want to do is I want to talk first, just very quickly, why? Why is this so important? Why is it so important that a leader speaks with clarity and conviction? And then I'll tell you some ways that we can do it, because it's all very well to talk about why it's important, but let's talk about ways that you can learn to speak as a leader. So, I'd like to ask the group, and just shout it out or stand up at a microphone, whatever you'd like. What are some of the characteristics that you aspire to portray in your roles? Now, I've been around the group a little bit. I've talked to some people who are about to graduate or in the middle of their education. I've also talked to other people who are at the midpoint in their career, or senior levels in their career. So what are some of the characteristics you aspire to portray, both in your future roles or in your current role? Let's hear it. There's no wrong answer here. What are some of the characteristics? Stand up and shout it out.
Integrity.
Integrity, thank you. What else? Let's hear some more.
Courageous.
Courage, thank you. What else?
Confident.
Confidence.
Passion.
Passion. Keep on going.
Knowledgeable.
Knowledgeable, thank you. From my table of lawyer friends.
Yes.
Who else? Vision. Sorry?
Vision.
Vision, thank you. So let's think about these for a second. I mean, these are very lofty characteristics of leadership. These are very big things to aspire to. How many of those characteristics would you say are portrayed by the way a leader communicates? Think about it. Integrity, passion, confidence, vision, courage. I would suggest you that all of them are. And that's the remarkable thing about communication at the leadership level, is a leader, just about everything at the senior level, just about everything a leader does or is expected to do is in fact delivered through the way they communicate. But the remarkable thing about it is this: we spend very little time focusing on communication. In fact, when you go through school, the entire focus is usually on your technical ability. When you get into the business world, more and more, especially as you rise through the ranks, which all of you will or are currently doing, it's about your ability to communicate. When I talk about communicating, it's with conviction and clarity. That's what's expected from a leader. Now, like I said before, this is all very well, but how do you do it? So that's why I'm here today. I'm going to give you 4 easy steps to start thinking about communicating at this very lofty level, a leadership level. So the first one is this: think like a leader. And then we're going to talk about developing a leader's script. We're going to talk about using the language of leadership, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on a leader's presence, which is in fact very important. Think like a leader. What does this mean? How do you think like a leader? And how does this affect your communication? Someone mentioned vision. A leader has to have vision. Now, for those of you who are at the beginning of your careers or still in school, you still need a vision. What's your vision for your future role? What's your vision for how you want to become involved in a company? What's your vision for your career? All leaders are driven by vision. Move from information to inspiration. I suggest to you that this is one of the most important things. Are there any engineers in the room? Okay? Do we have any? I had someone in the back who was working on supply chain management, I remember. Yeah? Thank you. Okay, here's one of the things about it. As you get into your career, information plays a critical role in your job, but it's not everything. And what can happen is, I've met many leaders who their vision and their messages are in fact hidden behind an overuse of information. When we're talking about leadership, we're driven by ideas, not information. So when we speak, we want to reduce that reliance on information and really focus on ideas. And I'll tell you how to do that. Move from negatives to positives. When I was young, my father always used to tell me, never sit on the fence in business, come in with a solution. And I think that's one of the best pieces of guidance I've ever had in business. And that's about what we're talking about, moving from negative to positive. Is bring solutions. Always bring solutions. It's very easy in business to focus on the negative. Your job as leaders is always to focus on the positive. Speak with conviction. What does that mean? Someone speaking with conviction. What does that mean to you? Yeah.
Maybe that you're committed to what you're talking about, and it's something that you're truly passionate about, so it shows that it's not just some topic that's you don't really care about. You really are passionate.
Passion. Thank you. Very well said. A leader needs to speak with conviction and passion. What this means is, I actually used to suggest to the leaders I was working with, I'd say to them, it is impossible to convince anyone of something that you don't personally believe in. And my boss came up to me at the end of one of my sessions and said, well, Gregor, that's probably not entirely true. There are some people, very skilled communicators, who are able to convince people of something they don't personally believe in. But I'm not sure that's a skill you necessarily want to have. And I can't do it. Most leaders can't. In fact, I would suggest that even the best communicators, if they're trying to convince an audience of something they don't personally believe in, there's something quite disconcerting about it. We get an uneasy feeling. It doesn't develop trust. So speaking with conviction is that. Believe in what you say and demonstrate it. Listen. You've heard this a lot. The importance of listening. Listening as an act of leadership. But listening means true listening, not just not talking. Listening means engaging with your audience, engaging with your teams, engaging with your superiors and peers, and truly listening to what they say. We're going to talk about scripting yourself as a leader. This is an interesting idea because when I first started working with the Humphrey Group, my background was in defense and aerospace, and I used to work with a lot of military leaders. And they never scripted themselves. In fact, one of the strengths of a military leader is their ability to speak off the cuff in a very powerful way. So I was a little bit skeptical about the idea of scripting yourself as a leader. What does this mean? This means something very different than being very organized in the way you speak. It means achieving clarity of thought. Clarity of thought is critical to convincing your audience of your idea. Clarity of thought means you know exactly what your core idea is, you know exactly how to defend it, support it, and you know exactly what you want from your audience. How many people have been in a meeting or a speech where you wonder, where's this person going? What's their point? This is very different. This is a manner of speaking in which you bring up your point very early on. So let me take you through it. Open with a grabber. Who knows what a grabber is? Who can tell me what a grabber is? Yeah.
An attention getter?
Yeah, it's an attention getter. But I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to say this. They used to call them icebreakers. And an attention getter has a certain purpose. But I'm going to talk about a grabber in a slightly different sense. I want it to be a way of connecting with the audience, engaging with the audience. We call it a verbal handshake. A grabber is a way of having that personal connection with the audience. Now, one of the things I did before I came up here was I cheated a little bit, and I went around the room to talk to some people before I spoke, because that allows me to have enough of a connection that I feel that I can speak to as a true audience. And that's the role of the leader, is to find a way of connecting with your audience before you even get to your point. Remember, a leader needs to develop trust in their audience. So the way you do that is through a very personal grabber. So one of the things you can do is share some of your passions. Talk about stories of your own experiences. Use that as a way of leading into your subject and your message. My passion is vintage Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and I find every excuse I can get to bring that into my grabber, just so you know. You're lucky I didn't do it today. But the reason I do that is because almost without question, there's someone in the audience who's interested in motorcycles. But more than that, it doesn't really matter. Because my introduction is a way of sharing something about myself and connecting to my subject and my message. So feel free to share stuff about yourself in business within the realms of what's appropriate. But I say to leaders, be personal. I know from working for leaders that I want to know about them. I want to share something about themselves. I want to hear about their experiences. So here's one piece of advice for a very powerful introduction every time you speak, is tell the story of how you developed your conviction. I was working with a leader very recently in Calgary, who for over a decade had been saying the same message to his people about the importance of safety. You can imagine in the oil and gas industry, safety is a very important thing. But in fact, his message was falling on deaf ears because he'd been saying it for so long and people just thought it was just words. So we worked with him, and I asked him, how did you develop this incredible passion and commitment to safety in the business? And he told me a very touching personal story about being 19 years old and working in northern Alberta and witnessing something that changed his vision, his view on safety for the rest of his life. And I said to him, have you ever shared this with your teams, with your people? He said, no. I said, please do. So the next time he spoke, he told that story before he led into his message. And let me tell you, the audience was riveted. That's what makes the connection. That's what makes leaders believable, is sharing your own experiences. Now the next point here, I said, state your subject. It's incredible how rarely leaders actually tell people what they're talking about. Don't forget, after your introduction, say, that's why I'm here to talk about this. That's why I'm here today to talk about speaking as a leader. Make sure you tell your audience exactly what your subject is. This applies to meetings. This applies to emails. This applies to everything. Make sure you state exactly what it is you're talking about. Now here's my favorite bit. Lead with a message. The point of your talk is to share a core idea. That's what your message is. Your core idea that you want to share with your audience. If you don't have a message, I would suggest it's probably not worth speaking. You have to have a message. You have to have an idea. And you have to think about it. When I work with leaders, they often spend days, weeks developing their message. My message to you today was, if you remember, that I firmly believed that the most important skill a leader can have is the ability to speak with clarity and conviction. That's the idea I want to share with you. I have a responsibility to state it clearly, and then I have a responsibility to prove it and tell you how you're going to do it. That's what I'm in the middle of doing right now. But remember, I brought it up very early on. This is a very different approach from what we used to see in business. People used to talk for a very long time, and then they'd wrap it up and say, so to conclude, when in fact the whole time you've been wondering, what is their idea? What is the one thing they want to convince me of? So bring that message right up front. Now, for all of you who are starting your careers, this is an incredibly valuable tool for you. You'll be going into senior leaders' offices or into boardrooms, and you'll be asked to present your ideas. Bring up the idea right from the beginning. A brief introduction. That's why I'm here today to talk about investment in Project ABC. I firmly believe that we need to dedicate additional resources to this project for the continued success of our company. Let me tell you the 3 reasons why I say that. That's what leaders want to hear. I've worked with hundreds of leaders, and each of them is saying the same thing. I want my people to bring the ideas, and I want them to state it clearly every single time. Develop a persuasive structure. You have to prove your idea. It's not enough for me to say, I'm convinced that all of you need to speak with clarity and conviction in order to succeed in business. I need to prove it to you, and I need to show you how to do it. So develop a structure. I told you at the beginning of my talk, first I'm going to say why I think it's important, and then I'm going to give you 4 ways in which you can do it. Tell the audience how you're going to structure your talk. Do you remember I talked about clarity of thought? That's what clarity of thought is. I remember the first time I actually heard a leader really control a meeting with an incredible clarity of thought. I just started my career, and I was invited into a meeting, and I was just sitting in the corner listening. And I watched as a leader didn't have any notes, didn't have any preparation, and he was asked a very difficult question. And he smiled and he responded with a very strong message about what was important. And then he said, and let me tell you the 4 reasons why I believe this. And I thought to myself, how does he know there's 4 reasons? How is he so organized in his head that he knows there's 4? And he went through 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was remarkable. The audience wants to know where you are in your thinking. Help them. Tell them how you're going to prove your point. Now, close with a call to action. The entire purpose of sharing your message, of doing all these things, is to close with a call to action. Remember, business is about action. It's about inspiring action. One of the things I always say is the big difference that I found between being in school and being in the business world was when you speak in an educational sense, you don't always necessarily need to inspire action. Sometimes you're informing. In business, you're never just informing. You're always inspiring action. Never forget that. Now let me give you some tips for a call to action. A call to action needs to be specific, and it needs to be time sensitive. I remember once I was working in the UK, and I was responsible for working on research and development projects. Now the company couldn't fund everything, so once a year we had to go in front of a panel of senior leaders, and we had to justify our project expenditure, and they choose which ones they wanted to fund. So I went in with my team, and I went in front of this panel of senior leaders, and we stated our case. And at the end I said, and what I'm looking for is your support and a commitment of resources. And so they kind of hummed and hawed, and they nodded, and they said, yeah, good. And I thought, this is fantastic. We got it. This is perfect. Another year. So I came out, and outside of the room, and my colleagues were milling around waiting for their turn to go in, and some had finished. And one of my colleagues came up, and she said, how did it go? I said, fantastic. I got full support and a commitment of resources. How did it go for you? And she said, really good, really good. I got a commitment of £1.3 million for the first 2 quarters of the project. And then as we go into prototype stage, I got a commitment of 3 specialists coming from the US to advise us on securing additional funding. And I thought, Well, what did I get then? Turns out I got nothing. My project was canceled because she was incredibly specific about what she wanted. She, down to the dollar amount, the number of people, their roles and titles. By being so specific, she was able to have an intelligent debate with the leadership team on whether or not it was possible. It's very easy for senior leaders or leaders at any level to say, absolutely, you got our support and you got all the resources you want. But in fact, it's not specific enough. They can't truly answer that question. So be incredibly specific with your call to action. Use the language of leadership. We don't always think about language. We don't always think about the words that we choose. And I think we need to. My message to you about language is be clear, conversational, and confident when you speak. Now, let me tell you a few reasons why I say that. First of all, one of the things that's very important is that I think we tend to get into business jargon a lot. In the defense and aerospace sector, you can imagine we're probably the worst at that. It was incredibly complex, the language we used to use, laden with acronyms and jargon. And in fact, I'd suggest to you that jargon and acronyms tend to mask the true meaning of what we're trying to say. I'd encourage all of you to be very clear in your language. Keep it simple. That's what people are looking for. Don't be overly apologetic. Have you ever heard anyone start off a talk with, or start off an idea by something like this? I just have a little idea I'd like to share with you. It's not necessarily the right one. It's just my opinion. And I understand that other people may have different views about this. And I'm sorry if this has already been brought up before, but have you heard that before? By the time this person starts, they undermine themselves to the point where their idea has very little chance of surviving. Be confident and clear when you speak. Use strong, confident language. As Canadians, we tend to be slightly over-apologetic. Don't apologize. I want everyone, after this talk, to check your voicemail message. Because I've heard a lot of messages that say, thanks very much for calling. Sorry, I'm unavailable to take your call. Why are you sorry that you're unavailable to take your call? I'm sure you're very busy. Don't apologize unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, there's also undermining language that we tend to use, and this happens a lot when we get in front of senior leaders. I've seen some very strong technical managers and leaders and specialists change their language and so strongly when they get in front of more senior people. Don't. Keep that same confident language you have with your peers and your friends. And also, here's the other thing. We tend to change our language and the way we speak when we get in front of a board of directors or whatever it is that's the most senior part of our company. Don't. Be exactly the same. Be respectful of hierarchy, but don't change the way you talk. Now, I know this for a fact because I work with senior leaders, and they say to me, why are people so formal around me? Right? They don't want that. They're not looking for that change, that difference. Okay? Respectful of hierarchy, but remember, clear, conversational, natural. I suggest to you that the way you should speak in business is very close to the way you speak with your peers, and I would suggest that at all levels. If you're speaking to the managing director of a company, you speak very similarly to the way you speak with a very well-respected peer. Keep that in mind. I remember in my own career, I used to change quite a lot as I spoke at different levels throughout the company. And in fact, my ability to persuade and inspire action was incredibly reduced as I became more and more formal and less like myself. Achieving a leader's presence. How many people believe that presence or charisma is something you're born with? How many people think it's something that you can learn? Yeah, good. I agree. I believe that a leader's presence can be learned. Now here's the interesting thing about it. It requires practice, and it requires a conscious effort. The people in high school who had a very natural charisma and were able to control and hold a room, if they don't work on it, A few years later, they won't have that. And you compare it to someone who maybe isn't born with the same sort of natural talents in terms of holding a room or charisma. If they work on having a strong presence, they can be incredibly impactful in their ability to hold a room. Now, there's some very simple tricks, tools to develop presence. And the reason I know about them is because at the Humphrey Group, we work with professional actors. Actors are some of the best people to understand how to hold a room, how to take a stage. And in fact, when I work with leaders, we bring in professional actors and acting coaches to help them. Because it's difficult. Let me tell you, I know how difficult it is to stand up in front of a group of people and speak and do it in a way that shows confidence. You have to have these sort of tools up your sleeve to know about them. So let's talk about them. Bring your script to life. This is one of the biggest things in business. I see it over and over again. Business doesn't have to be boring when you speak. All right? Get rid of that corporate monotone. I remember I was working again in the UK once, and I was walking down a hallway, and there's offices all down both sides. And as I passed an office, there's two people huddled over a conference phone, and they were listening to a pre-recorded call and taking notes. And as I walked past them, I thought, my goodness, that was a boring call. And then I took a few more steps, and I stopped, and I realized it was me. That was me on that pre-recorded call. And I thought, how awful. I sound so boring. My voice is so monotone. It has no interest. And that's incredibly important to realize, is you have to actually insert energy when you speak. Bring your script to life. This means that leaders want to see your excitement for your ideas. So whether it's in a meeting or in an elevator or you're passing someone in the hallway, show your excitement for it. Don't feel that you have to be reserved when you speak. Now, I'm not saying go over the top, but in fact, you'll find that you have to go pretty far to engage and energize an audience. Bring your script to life. You are the best visual. I love this one. How many people are fans of PowerPoint? How many people hate PowerPoint? And this is a trend we're starting to see, is PowerPoint really reduces a leader's ability to inspire an audience in many cases. Now, PowerPoint has a very specific task. It's very good for bringing together a few key points, or it's very good for demonstrating something visually. But remember, you are your best visual. Now, you notice when I came up here, I tried to start off with a lapel mic, and it didn't work properly, so I switched to the lectern. But I would have much preferred to have moved away from the lectern, because I believe that I am the best visual. In order for me to bring my ideas across and be expressive, I have to use myself. I don't want you looking at the screens. Every time the PowerPoint goes up, you're not listening to me. So in fact, I probably prefer it with no lectern, no PowerPoint, and just me speaking with you. That's how I really want to do it. And that's what I'd suggest to you each and every time you speak, when you have the opportunity to speak, is get rid of all those things. Use them only if you absolutely need them. Now, it takes a lot of courage to stand up without those things, because we use them as a crutch. A lectern is a bit of a crutch. We like hiding behind it. It's much more difficult
to stand here.
The reason is because you're exposed. We like actually to hide behind things. Try and move away from it. It takes a ton of courage, but give it a try. It makes a big difference. It engages the audience in a much different way. The eyes of a leader. Eye contact. It's interesting. I went around the room beforehand, like I said, and I was watching the way all of you speak when you were chatting with your friends and colleagues. An incredible, genuine eye contact. Eye contact is a very powerful thing when you speak. And all of you were doing that naturally. The interesting thing is, though, as soon as we get out into business environments, we tend to lose that eye contact. It changes. We become much more stiff. So use that same genuine, natural eye contact. The way to engage people is the best way to do it is through the eyes. Now, they used to teach you some awful tricks. I remember when I was learning public speaking, they said, Gregor, focus on a dot at the end of the room and scan the room. I call it a sprinkler. Right? When in fact what happens is you sort of don't touch anyone. Or the other one that often happens in a business meeting is if someone is nervous, is something I call the mesmerizer. which is where I focus on one person and one person only. And I give them such direct and focused eye contact that they get so nervous that all they can do is smile or laugh. And they think, when is he going to stop looking at me? So share the eye contact, share it with the room, and do it in a genuine way. There's no real tricks to it, just make it real. Try and touch as many people as you can with your eye contact. Find your leader's voice. I talked a little bit about voice, but I want to talk about it more because I believe this is really important. Your voice is your tool for adding energy and excitement to your ideas. Use it to your advantage. All of you have great voices. Now, one of the things is, we're very lucky in Canada that all of us come from very different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages. I was born in Scotland, and I moved over when I was quite young. My father held on to his Scottish brogue for many years, and in fact, he's convinced that 50% of his success in business was due to his Scottish accent. But you know what? He did it very well because he enjoyed his accent, he spoke slowly, and it wasn't something that he tried to hide. And here's something I'd like to suggest, it might be a little bit different, is if you're speaking English as a second language or an accent, or you're in a different country, I worked for many years in Europe, enjoy the accent, enjoy the differences. Be unique, but you have a responsibility, even more so, to be clear and slow in the way you communicate. So that's one of the big things, is pace. How many people in this room feel that they speak too quickly? How many people feel that they speak too slowly? So one of the things that the Hunter Group would say is, if you think you're speaking too quickly, slow down. If you think you're speaking too slowly, slow down. It's almost impossible to speak too slowly. Especially when you're talking to a new audience. Slow it down. Add pauses for emphasis. Make sure your audience can follow you. Because remember, when you're delivering an idea, you need to give your audience time to digest this incredible idea you have. Let it sink in. So one of the things you'll notice is when leaders deliver a message, they'll often pause after delivering their message. They're letting it sink in. Letting the audience have time to think about it. So when it comes to presence, the biggest thing is to be yourself. Again, we live in an amazing time where leaders are encouraged to be themselves. You can be relaxed. That's what you're looking for. This formal approach to speaking, this formal approach to communication, it's no longer something that's expected, luckily. So be yourself. Now, I talked before about the importance of message. And I'd like to do an exercise. Does everyone have pen and paper in front of them? Okay. I'd like you to think of an upcoming communication opportunity that each of you have. Make it something important. Something coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I want you to think of the subject. Remember, I said to you, a leader has a responsibility to state their subject. So I want you to write it down. Write down the subject of your upcoming communication opportunity. I'll give you about 20 seconds. Jot it down. Okay, let's hear a few of them. Courage of a leader. Can I hear, just please stand up, and if I can hear one of the subjects of an upcoming communication opportunity. Thank you.
Team building for a volunteer organization.
Team building for a volunteer organization. Thank you. Who else? Subject.
I'm giving a presentation on if firing people in Canada is too difficult.
If firing people in Canada is too difficult. Okay, so what I suggest to you there, great subject, but you've also wrapped in a bit of a message. Okay, so keep it very focused on the topic, okay, which is probably like dismissing employees in Canada. Okay, and then you'll get into your message. Well done, Tom. Okay, so that's one of the important things. Thank you. It's here.
I have a presentation on performance appraisals.
Performance appraisals. Thank you. This is my favorite table here. Yeah, thanks. So, okay, very well done. The topic is exactly that. What is the topic of your presentation? But it shouldn't be controversial. Okay, Each of you has a subject. Now it's time to develop a message. Your message is the core idea you want to share with your audience. The message is the most important bit of your talk. The message is what you believe. It's your conviction. What do you believe about your subject? Jot it down. I'll give you about 15 seconds. When I work with senior leaders, I give them a few days. You have 15 seconds. This is a process I encourage all of you to do every single day. You go to your job, you go to your classes, is think every day before you show up. What is my message? What do I believe about what I need to talk about today? What are my convictions? Let's hear a few of them. Who'd like to stand up and share the message that they've developed? Thank you.
I'm actually having a trivia night March 15th. It's a fundraiser for the United Way. So my message would be that we want to have a lot of fun, we want to make a lot of money, and we want to do it for charity. So it'd be excellent if you want to know.
Good for you. So what you've done there is, in fact, you've wrapped up some of your justification for why people should be there. I suggest to you that your message is even more clear and more powerful than that. Remember, you're focused on your audience. What do you believe? Why do you think it's important they're there? If you're talking to your audience, why should they be there?
They should be there for the satisfaction of doing good, to make themselves
Fantastic.
feel good.
That's your message. I strongly believe that this event is a great cause. Let me tell you the 3 reasons why I say that. Okay, that's how you get clear, powerful messages, very simple language. Nicely done. It's all there. Just bring it out. Who else? Who else wants to share a message? Thank you.
We're actually doing a presentation for a class called Marketing Strategy in order to promote the marketing program.
Yeah.
So the message would basically be marketing program within the University of Windsor School of Business is strong, clear, and exciting experience. Which
Fantastic. End it there. That's it. Keep your message short. Well done. And then you're going to have to prove it. Okay, you're going to have to prove your message. But that's the idea that we want to hear. Now, guidance. You've both done it very well. Guidance for your message should be very short. 1 sentence. Now, for all of you, that means no semicolons, dashes, or additional punctuation. 1 sentence. Why do you think it has to be 1 sentence? Why does your message need to be 1 sentence? Yeah, get to the point. Make it memorable. You want people to come away after your talk saying, this is what this person believes. Make it memorable. Your message should always be positive. Why should your message always be positive? What does a negative message do?
You want to positive so you can have that call to action.
Yeah, that's right. The only way to inspire others to action is through a positive message. Negative messages simply don't work. That's it. Keep it positive. Okay, now, you have a subject, you have a message. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to write down 2 points to support your message. Go for it. Okay, keep those in mind. Those are the points that support your idea. Now I said 2 points. There's no magic number for how many points you have to support your idea, but keep it short. I'll give you an example of why. If I started off today by saying something like, I firmly believe that the most important skill a leader can possess is the ability to speak with clarity and conviction. Let me tell you the 23 reasons why I believe that. Okay? I'm done. So keep it short. Even if you have lots of ideas, keep it to those very powerful 3 to 5 ideas. Okay, call to action. Jot down your call to action very quickly. What do you want from your audience? What do you want them to do? Make it very precise. Make it clear. Make it time sensitive. If you're looking for money, ask for the dollar amount. If you need something done in a week, tell them what day you want it for. And here's the other thing. A call to action isn't always asking the audience to do something. It may be offering to do something yourself. I call it a self-directed call to action. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And that's what I want to give you as one of the strongest pieces of advice for structuring a talk as a leader, is always think about what you can do for the audience. I love hearing leaders say, and here's what I commit to doing for you. It may be something you're already doing, but make sure you state it. Jot down your call to action. Okay, I'd like to hear 2 people, their call to action. Who's going to be courageous and stand up and share their call to action? Thank you. Fantastic. I love hearing that. Well done. Thank you. Time sensitive, very clear. It's not that we're gonna deliver this. We're gonna complete it by this date. One more call to action.
Just according to the market.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're promoting the educational experience, and on top of that, we also provide it with this experiential learning, so you can actually apply it and learn it at the same time. So it's divided into content and experience.
Good. Well done. So here's my message and call to action to you. I want to remind you of my message, and in a longer talk, it's often appropriate to restate your message at the end. I've said it several times, and I'm going to say it again. I strongly believe that your ability to communicate with clarity and conviction will help you achieve success as a leader. And here's my call to action to you. Commit to improvement. What this means is, I know from working with leaders how important communication is in their roles. Okay? Take that chance. Commit to practicing and making a concerted effort to be a powerful communicator. The only way you get good at it is by making an effort and practicing. And that's my second point. You have to practice. It's like any sport, any skill. Speaking as a leader is something that you need to work on. So practice it. I encourage you to work with your peers. Practice speeches, practice talks. Ask people for feedback. And the last one is really important. Enjoy yourself. I'm not sure if you've ever heard, but they did a survey and they found out that the greatest fear people have in life is public speaking, more than death. This is true. This is a true result of the survey. People would rather die than speak in public. and for many people, for almost all of us, it is a very daunting task. It's difficult. It takes a ton of courage. Okay? But enjoy yourself. It's not as difficult as people make it sound. If I'm encouraging you to be yourself, have passion for your ideas, have a very clear call to action, and be excited about what you're talking about, it's not that difficult. So enjoy yourself a lot more, both in your school and in business. When you get up in front of a group of people, engage with them and have fun with it. I said to you before, speaking in business doesn't need to be boring. Thanks very much.